Hi, welcome to Life on the Rock. Tonight we have members from Communion and Liberation. This is a movement especially popular among young people that was very dear to the hearts of Pope John Paul II and Pope Benedict and now Pope Francis. And we have two members from Benedictine College in Atchison, Kansas, Vince Petruccelli and Jacob Donaldson. They're going to tell us about their chapter of CL there and the great works they're doing and the spirituality of CL. So, good to see you, Doug.
You too, Father.
And we also have Steve Carlin. He's the director of the North American Outreach for 40 Days for Life. Steve, welcome to the show.
Good to be here, thank you.
Good to have you on.
Great to be here, thank you.
And 40 Days for Life is just, you launch 2 campaigns a year.
We do.
When do you have your campaigns?
We do a campaign in the spring, which it coincides with Lent every year. So I'm from the upper Midwest. We joke there is no spring campaign in the upper Midwest. It's a winter campaign, but we call it the spring campaign. And then we do one in the fall, which usually covers the month of October and a few days after and a few days before.
And give us an overview of 40 Days for Life. What is that?
Sure. It's a peaceful, prayerful campaign that aims to end abortion through 3 components: prayer and fasting, community outreach, really educating our communities on the crisis of abortion in our midst, and then what I think is kind of the hallmark of our campaign, peaceful vigil, praying all day, every day in front of the buildings where abortions take place.
So it's 40 days of prayer at the site of the abortion clinic.
Exactly,
right?
Exactly.
And we just started one Ash Wednesday.
Yes.
And what is the fruit of this movement that you've seen, maybe the turnarounds?
Sure. We've been blessed to see more than 9,700 confirmed saved lives through 40 Days for Life. And those are just the ones we know of, where there's evidence, perhaps the mother who was planning to have an abortion comes back and says something like, "Thank you for being here. I chose life because you were here." So that's happened nearly more than 9,700 times. We're approaching 10,000. We expect that we'll hit that number by the grace of God this spring. And we have seen more than 100 abortion workers have conversions, leave their jobs, and begin a walk with Christ. And we have now seen 60 abortion centers close their doors once and for all following a 40 Days for Life campaign. So those are some of the fruits that we've been blessed by.
Abby Johnson being one of the turnarounds, who's written books and a great speaker now, pro-life speaker.
Yes, Abby was one of the early abortion workers who left the industry, and now she has her own apostolate called And Then There Were None, and she has helped more than 100 other abortion workers leave the abortion industry. So we've seen a ripple effect that is really, it's impossible even to grasp the full scope of it.
So if people want to get involved, what steps should they take?
The best thing they can do is visit 40daysforlife.com, and that's where they can find out what is the closest campaign to where they live, and it's also where they can find out how to get on our email list and get the updates from the worldwide campaign.
And wouldn't you say, Steve, that there are other effects to something like this, such as, we look at the idea that there are so many saves, so many lives that, from the mothers who are saying that their babies, that they did not choose abortion. But also the fact that you're incorporating so many people, hundreds and hundreds of people, thousands of people, who are deepening their own personal prayer life, their own life of sacrifice and fasting. They're recognizing a cause, they're recognizing that there's something bigger than themselves, and they're engaging in that spiritual fight.
Absolutely. We have seen from the surveys we sent out, more than 90% of our participants report spiritual growth during the course of their involvement in 40 Days for Life. I've got a friend who I've known back since middle school. We got involved in 40 Days for Life together as volunteers, and he said it was like being on a 40-day long retreat. So we hear stories like that all of the time.
Yeah. And it's powerful because you think about that's what our Lord did before he went into his public ministry or his spiritual combat, if you will, with the devil, to cast out demons. And he himself was tempted 3 times in the desert as he prayed, fasted for 40 days. So really, it's a great example of our marching orders coming from the Lord himself.
Absolutely. And when 40 Days for Life started, it was really the fruit of prayer. People that were frustrated about how they could end abortion in their community. They needed an answer for that. So they took it to the Lord, and they came to be inspired to think about our scriptures and think about how the Lord repeatedly uses that time period of 40 days to test his people, but also to transform his people. And we're hoping that we'll continue to see transformation of our communities through the 40 Days for Life campaign.
Steve, you give me an idea, just a little bug in the ear here for you, a little thought. 40-day program of prayer and fasting to defeat terrorism in the world.
Gosh, wouldn't that be great?
Because all the summits that our president and the other leaders want to hold to discuss what to do with extremism and terrorism and so forth isn't really going to turn hearts as much as what we know prayer and fasting can do. you know.
You know, sometimes prayer and fasting end up on the back burner, and I don't know why that is. We think, well, we need to pray, but we're going to do this or we're going to do that.
Right.
And when we put prayer first, I think that's why we have seen all of those tangible fruits from 40 Days for Life, because it's not just giving prayer lip service. That is the main thing.
And I'll bet some people would probably argue, well, it's also the fact that psychologically, you know, you've got these people in front that's just making these people think a different way. And that's going to play into it to some degree, but it's never going to have the same weight and impact unless that prayer and that personal sacrifice on the part of the individual people is there, is it?
No doubt it would burn itself out. I mean, we've got campaigns, some cities do twice a year, some go 24 hours a day, and that's not something that can sustain itself on a merely human level.
Right.
That's got to be a huge infusion of the Holy Spirit and of God's grace.
That's powerful.
And can you talk a little bit about the efficacy of going to the clinic to pray? Because some people say, well, I just want to pray at home, which is certainly valuable and needed. What about the efficacy of going there to pray?
It's so important because that's where the lives are lost. And we talk about how when you're praying at the abortion center, you can be that first sign of mercy if a woman does have the abortion, and hopefully you can be that last sign of hope that convinces her not to have that abortion just through the mere presence. We have heard reports from the abortion industry's own numbers that when there is someone praying out in front of the abortion center, as many as 75% of the abortion appointments are not followed through on. So that means that of every 4 children scheduled to lose their lives, 3 of them may very well live to see another day. I think that's an incredible return on our investment of time.
That is. So, again, if people want to find out, go to
40daysforlife.com.
Okay. Well, thanks so much, Steve, for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Great
We're
work.
going to take a short break. We'll be back with Communion and Liberation, so don't go away. Back in a moment. Hi, welcome back. We have Vince Petruccelli and Jacob Donaldson from Atchison, Kansas, Benedictine College. Welcome.
Thank you.
Get all that out.
Father.
And I thought first for the show we'd kind of go through what the movement does and then maybe explain theology behind it more. So, Vince, you are the responsible, we call it. How big is the chapter of CL at Benedictine?
There's probably about 25 to 40 of us at our weekly catechesis. And then at our other smaller functions, it depends.
Right.
Anywhere from the whole group to a couple of us will be participating in any given event.
Right. And it's more than just a student organization, right, Jacob? It's got a larger group to it.
Yeah, it's an international organization. It started off in Italy in the 50s, and it's all over from the Middle East to South America.
All sorts of people too.
All sorts of people, yeah.
Right.
Families, young people, old people, I mean, everyone.
Right. And the founder is Father Giussani. He's written a number of books. He was a professor in Milan, right? And can you tell us something about his story?
Yeah, I mean, he was a young priest who they kind of say he had a career track because he was brilliant. And he, in 1954, one day was on a train, and he started talking to a group of young people and realized that for them, faith had nothing to do with life. So they would kind of give lip service to tenets of the faith, but it didn't make them more alive. But for Father Giussani, the relationship with Jesus was the thing that made him most alive. Right. And so he wanted to share that with them. And so he sort of deviated from the sort of career track, from teaching at a seminary or professorship, something like that, and went and taught in a public high school. And then from there, these kids that he met just wanted to keep following him. They wanted to stay with him. And the movement was born from that friendship.
I was watching a documentary on the movement, and they said something that caught me, that especially like in the 50s, society was changing so fast, I guess after the war in Italy and everything, and there was some more, financially it was getting more successful. And so the struggle was to incorporate faith into this changing culture, changing daily life. And I thought that's what characterizes our age, right? We're changing so fast, and is our faith life speaking into that, and is it real, right, for people in a modern world?
Yeah. I mean, Giussani will always quote, or he always used to quote Dostoevsky when he said, can a truly modern man believe in the divinity of Jesus Christ? And that was his question. That was always what he would ask. Can someone who lives in our world, who's completely immersed in our world, actually believe in these things and it actually have an impact on life?
Right.
That was his whole focus. That was what he was.
And I think the challenge for us Christians in evangelization is to, yes, I mean, John Paul loved this theme, you know, that you can't shut Jesus out of the modern city. You know, I mean, Jesus has something to say to man, period, whatever situation he is in. So we need to have confidence in the gospel to preach it in a way, or to share it in a way, right, that speaks to modern people. That of course it's always going to be relevant, and it's challenging in today's times, right, to get people to listen.
Yeah.
But CL's got a great approach. That's why I wanted to have you on, because it got my attention. I saw how much Pope Benedict loved it, and he gave beautiful talks. He frequently met with Giussani, I think, as head of the CDF and things, and had a deep respect for it. And Pope Francis uses that language of CL, doesn't he? And like encounter.
Language of encounter, yeah.
So,
yeah.
Was some of their writings important to you, Benedict's or?
Yeah, I mean, growing up, especially in high school, we would read the encyclicals together, or just other writings. And there's always been an emphasis to pay attention to the Pope,
right?
Because Giussani said this is the man that Christ gave us as a sign of his continued presence with us. This is the reference point.
Right.
This is the focal point. And so attention to the activity of the Pope, even in general, has always been encouraged.
Okay.
And that, I mean, for me, high school was sort of the era of Benedict. So we got to see him in 2008 and constantly given his writings and taught to pay attention to what he was doing, how he was living.
Were you part of a CL group that went to see Pope Benedict?
Yeah. I saw him in Washington, D.C. and then in New York. We went with a lot of the young people from high school and college, went together to see him in Yonkers in New York.
Okay. Well, let's do what I actually said we're going to do. All right, what does CL do? You all live off campus. There's a few members in a house off campus.
Yeah.
And then what's the daily schedule, Jacob? What's the first thing you do?
Well, we have morning prayer at 7:40 every weekday, and we meet and pray the hours, and then we pray the Angelus every weekday together at noon at the little grotto we have on campus.
And why is that? You said that was important to Father Giussani. Why was that important?
Well, I mean, to pray the Angelus in the midst of my day, you know, to not forget, what's happening today, like what's important, what's essential.
Right. Because you pray the Angelus in the morning, at noon, in the evening, at night. So
for me, it's a great reminder during the day.
Yeah.
So yeah, we do that, and then. Every Thursday we do some sort of charitable work. So we go to a child care service in Atchison, and we hang out with the kids and play with the kids. And then we do music therapy for one of our friends who's disabled every other week. So we go back and forth. And then Friday we have our weekly catechesis, School of Community, where we look at every week we have a reading from typically something written by Father Giussani, and we'll read that during the week. And then on Fridays we meet and we talk about the text, but most importantly we talk about the text, and in talking about the text, what we're trying to do is to verify, well, is this true given my experience? What was my experience of the week? Where did I see this week? What does this mean? What significance does this have? And really I mean, for me, the School of Community is, I mean, this is like really the pinnacle of my week, that I can share my experience with others, and I can hear from my friends that I love so dearly about theirs. And then we have a annual retreat we call the Vacation in Estes Park. It's been in Estes Park for a while, and every CLU community, a Community and Liberation University community meets, and we have several retreats throughout the year. But really, and we're also just great friends. We hang out a lot. We study together. And we really live a life together.
And that's at the heart of it, right? This formation of community, and that's where man finds his freedom, his happiness, his joy and peace. That, right, the faith isn't lived in isolation. It's connected intrinsically to freedom, right? That's something we all crave. So I was struck by your schedule there too. Is, you know, in America we could be all about, you know, great works and doing all this great stuff, and it's simple. You're going to sing to a disabled person or care for some children or something like that. It's simple, kind of humble works, right? That and I noticed that in the movement, in the documentary, there was a lot of joy, a lot of singing, and work with the poor. They went to the slums in Italy and stuff like that. Talk about the role of singing. You all are great singers. You even write your own music, don't you?
Yeah. I mean, there are some characteristic songwriters that are in the movement, but I mean, we learned from Giussani, from other people that value music highly, that sort of music is the greatest way that we can express ourselves. It's sort of man's highest expression, and so when we sing together, we can learn to live things, to feel things, to think things that we can't from just sort of reading books. And so we always open our meeting with a song that has to do with the reading that we're doing. But just something that wakes us up, that sort of awakens our heart, because that's another thing that the beauty of song can do for us. It makes us pay attention to the things that are around us and sort of enlivens us. So that's one part of it. And then singing is just, it's kind of a great way to be together. So when we're hanging out on a Friday night and we can all sing together, it's a very particular way to be together, and very strikingly beautiful, because we can all sort of lend our voice. I mean, we're not all great singers, but there's sort of this joyous unity that comes about as the result of our singing, and singing songs that mean something to us. I mean, we sing a lot of sort of pop rock songs, but a lot of them are songs that express something very human.
Can you do something now for us?
Huh? If you want, I mean, do you have a request?
Well, no, we don't do that.
I need a guitar.
No, just pick something, do something a cappella. Go ahead.
We don't want to put you on this. No, you don't.
Okay.
Good choice. Yeah, something that struck me too, you said, is you all study together. And I know that's probably not attractive to young people out there. Go join CL to study, but talk about that. I thought it was an important part of your movement.
Yeah. I mean, the simplest way to put it is that, I mean, there's an emphasis on our vocation right now is to be students. And so, like any given vocation, you have to take that very seriously. And I find that I can't take my studies seriously when I try and do everything alone. I can't. I mean, I can neither concentrate nor really go to the depth of it. So it's really in sharing silent time studying with these guys, and then in conversations about what we're doing, that I find I can really plunge into my studies, and then it becomes something really amazing.
Right.
I don't know, Jacob can.
So it wasn't even like going and doing what you normally think of group study is you're all in the same class, sharing notes. But you guys go to some space, everybody's quiet, studies, then you might have a break time to do some kind of recreation or something.
Or
But,
sing.
Or sing, right? Right.
Yeah.
So the theme there, though, is to do everything fully. And you're a student now, right? So you fully enter into that. You enter into works of charity, the liturgy, the Mass, and that Christ is to be found in those things. That's the theme of his writing, right? That
I mean, I think that's something that we've found to be true in a surprising way. It's always a surprise, because sort of meeting Giussani, meeting the movement, there was never sort of a do this and then you'll get this.
Mm-hmm.
It was sort of, come be with us and see what happens to you, see what you discover.
Right.
And I found this mysterious presence sort of at the bottom of things, calling me, coming to be in relationship with me. And I don't know, that's...
Right.
Studying isn't a burden
Yeah.
anymore. I mean, it's really truly like what I'm called to now,
Right.
and really with the love for life that I have from meeting this. I don't know. I'm excited to study.
Yeah.
Honestly,
These are more interesting.
Yeah, things are much more interesting.
Well, that's a good segue to your story, Jacob. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we'll hear your story of why you personally were attracted to CL. So don't go away. We'll be back in a moment. Welcome back. And Doug, you had a question.
I did, yes. I'd like to know, where do you think that desire to go to the depth that you guys described comes from? How does that happen? You just listed kind of what the day looks like, and the day has some real meat and potatoes to it, on a psychological and spiritual level. Not every standard operating, adult in this world, high school, college, or older, is necessarily ready for that. And yet CL isn't made up of everybody who is already deep intellectual, philosophical, and spiritual, individuals. What do you think is the initial draw, or what stories have you heard from others or yourselves that gets people to take a look at that kind of depth and that kind of community?
Well, in my experience, any change like that's happened for me has been completely a surprise. Mm-hmm. To have this real passion for life, this intensity, where everything has such importance, that didn't come from me doing X, Y, and Z, but it was a complete gift. It totally caught me by surprise.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And it's always by finding someone that lives that way.
Yeah.
So there has to be,
So
in my experience, it has to be in the relationship with someone. Giussani has an interesting phrase for this. He says in a sense, we learn to be more alive through osmosis. So literally just through the presence of being with someone, just being with them, being next to them.
Yeah. Or being on a show called Life on the Rock.
Yeah.
That alone can
Exactly.
give you more life.
Yeah. So you just need to bring everyone here and
Yeah.
it'll be fine.
Exactly. Everybody
But-
will understand it.
Yeah,
So it's through the encounter then.
Through the encounter,
Yeah.
because there was no program, there was no book that someone gave me.
Okay.
I was with people that lived this way at a time when, I didn't appreciate the depth of anything when I was meeting these people.
Well, give us more detail. You were in high school, or how old were you?
Yeah, I met the movement, my family met the movement when I was in 3rd grade, and then I started paying a little bit more attention when I was in about 7th, 8th grade. And at that time I was interested in making friends and being popular, and so I was kind of a jerk in school and a little bit into myself. But I remember the priest that I had for Latin in 7th grade one time wrote on the chalkboard, he wrote, "Holiness equals happiness." And I've been struck by that to this day, because that was the way that he lived. And that was a formula in a sense that I'd never heard before. It was always, holiness means like you're a good person and you do certain things. Happiness, well, that's something entirely different. But in him, I saw someone for whom a relationship with Jesus, a life in the church, was really the thing that animated him. And he was so animated. He was so happy. One of the happiest people I've ever met. And I got to know him really well throughout the years. And a number of other people like that. So it's really true that just in being with these people and sharing life and sharing conversations, eventually you get to sort of talk about that depth explicitly. But literally in just seeing them, seeing how they live,
So
it started to grow in me.
Yeah, the initial spark then is really just what is clearly in someone else that
Yeah.
made you just think, hey.
Yeah.
Made me jealous.
Yeah.
Okay, really?
Yeah, really.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah. Were you angry to
total
throw things
attraction.
around too? And was it that kind of jealousy?
Sometimes.
Part of the method is like looking at our desires, right, and examining them. Talk about what Jasani would say about that. Or
Yeah, I mean, just an example. When I was in 7th, 8th grade, I had a great desire to be with my brother, my older brother, who's 4 years older than me, and just to be sort of popular with his friends. So I was this 13, 14-year-old kid who just had an intense desire to be loved, and I didn't know that at the time. It was just like, I want Francis's friends to like me, and I've realized that was an experience that it sort of led me further. It led me deeper into what the movement was offering, but it was because of that desire, and it's even like, you could call it a shallow desire or a silly desire. Just I want to be funny around my brother's friends, but there was something deeper going on there. This desire for love, this desire for companionship, to be known, to be heard, and that's why I think Giussani always emphasized it, because there's always something deeper. He had such like faith in us as humans that we're made for more. We're made for something greater, and paying attention to the desires that I have in the midst of life, I can discover that.
Right.
I can be faithful to that impetus.
Right.
For me, it's always been looking at somebody and saying, I want what you have. That's the only thing that's drawn me, is to say, you have something. What is it?
Right.
And even seeing other people that are full of desire, like not people that have everything figured out, but people that really, really want something from life.
Yeah.
That was sort of that wakes me up. It does to this day.
Yeah, and there's certainly our culture gives the impression that the faith is always holding us back. It pulls us out of life. But we find the saints had a deeper experience of life. Not to say they were doing exotic things, but they could experience joy and peace in all situations in life, right? They found Christ in them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, even like eating, cleaning, those kind of experiences, for me, on a smaller level, they've become much more intense, much more interesting after I met Jesus. Cleaning, yeah.
We got to explain that one. Why are we cleaning?
Well, there was just actually this priest that I was talking about earlier, he would always give me the penance of cleaning my room. And so it was something that I always had to pay attention to as a constantly wayward high schooler. But there was an emphasis of paying attention to details, paying attention to beauty with these people. And I realized that it was only after sort of had this encounter with Jesus that my desire for beauty, my desire for order was sparked. And it's not just classical music. I mean, it is classical music, art, stuff like that, culture, but also just order in a very basic and simple way.
Right.
And so I've learned to need that, to need the order of sort of my kitchen at school being clean or my bathroom being clean, and doing that in a very detail-oriented way. Because now, in a sense, to skip over those details is to skip over something that I'm being called to do, to just skip over the fact that Christ is asking something of me.
Right.
Along those lines, did you guys, do you find yourselves, the more you grow in this, do you find yourselves, as you desire more order in your life, being more repulsed by those things that are disordered, such as in entertainment and fashions of the world?
Actually, for me, like after meeting this, there's not, I don't have a total averse reaction per se, but really, because the question is huge for me is what do I want? Like, why am I doing this? What does this show about me? And I can look at people who might be doing immoral things, and I can say, like, what does that gesture, like, what's happening there? Like, what do they want? I find a real love for the wayward people, to a very extreme level.
Let's talk about your story, Jacob. You have a funny.
Speaking of wayward.
Being not too subtle here, but you were sent to Benedictine College.
Yeah. So
Condemned to Benedictine College. Right?
Well, it is in Kansas. According to some people, of course, I live in Nebraska. You're not a fan of Kansas, are you?
No.
well, my parents are amazing people. They're very devout, incredible people, and I mean, I look up to them completely. But in high school, they told me that I could go to a school on the Newman Guide. It's a list of 26 approved, I think, by the U.S. Council of Bishops. I don't know, a list of Catholic schools. And I hated that. I study theater, and I wanted to go to a conservatory. I wanted to study acting. You know, I didn't want to go to a liberal arts school in Kansas. And so going, I mean, I went very resentfully. I mean, and I don't know, I rebelled. I didn't live, I lived a very wayward life, I guess. And I mean, I was doing that, but the thing was that for me, the Catholicism, in a way, my question was, why would anybody do that? Like, why would anybody live that way? Like, why do you conform to those rules? What does this do? This makes you more anxious. This limits you. You don't seem yourself. You don't seem happy. So why should I follow this? And maybe that's true. Maybe it's not. But I mean, that's the way I perceive things. But the moment that things changed was that I met Vince, and I met some people in Clue, and they were so happy. These people who were full of life. They talked about music, film. You know, they argued about philosophy, about everything, and I was completely attracted to that, and so that's where I started following, because I mean, like I said earlier, my question was why, like, how can they be this way? What allows you to live like that? And that's the only way that things changed for me. It was a complete gift.
Right. And one person in particular had an impact on you, right?
Yeah. So I was at the Clue Vacation, which is our annual retreat for Communion and Liberation University. And I was sitting at a table at lunch, and there were...
After freshman year.
Yeah, I'm sorry. This was right after my freshman year of college. And I was only on the vacation really because, I mean, I was attracted to these people. All my friends were there. They invited me. But I honestly didn't really believe in God. I wasn't super interested. And I remember I was sitting at a table at lunch with 10 or so people, all these kids in Clue, and I was arguing, and I was saying, we were arguing about whether or not love was real. And I was telling them, no, love doesn't exist. It's completely a feeling. Love, that's, you want something. You wouldn't do anything nice for it. You wouldn't do anything good for anybody if you weren't getting anything out of it. Like, I don't believe in love. And this girl stopped me, and very firmly she said, "What the heck are you talking about?" She said, "What do you think I'm doing sitting here listening to you? You make me so uncomfortable." I completely disagree with what you're saying. I think you're kind of an idiot.
Right.
But she said, "But I'm sitting here, and in this weird way, like, I love you. I have an affection for you. Right. Like I care. I want to listen to you." It's like, how could you say that? And for me, that moment, that particular face, like, I don't know, I saw something that so much corresponded to this desire that I have, like to the fullness of who I am, that from that moment on, I mean, but really, I mean, I asked, like, how could this girl love me like that? How could this person look at me? Yeah. You know, we always talk about it's a gaze that changes us. And this girl's gaze on me, it was like, where does that come from? And from then on, that I've been following the movement, following the church ardently, because that's where I find this gaze the most, over and over and over and over again. And I'm discovering more and more what was truly at the bottom of that girl looking at me. How could she do that?
Right. And I think it speaks to the reality that faith creates community, right? We form a new we in the church, and we experience love and to be known, to have friends and things, and how that changes us. You had a great love of acting before you had this experience. How has it changed your approach to acting?
Well, in a lot of ways. So on a very practical level, going to rehearsal before, it's like, I don't want to go for 3 hours, 5 days a week. Then it was kind of a burden, like, oh, let's just get it going. I just want to be on site. We just want to do a show. And now, I get exhausted, right? But there's this promise. I've discovered that everything's given to me, even this rehearsal. So what's at the bottom of it? And it makes me take the rehearsal so much more seriously. I'm trying new things on stage. I'm a better actor because I take my life seriously. Things aren't a burden so much. But also, really, to be on stage and to be able to consider, why does this person, the character that I'm playing, why are they this way? What's at the bottom of their acting this way, of this drama that they're living? How can I, in what way do I relate to that? In what way do I have the same thing? In what way is my heart the exact same? And really, because I have a passion for life. Everything matters to me. And so to be on stage and to think, what is it to be sad? What is it to be anxious? What is it to be what is it to be happy? What is it to be excited?
What is it to be human?
What is it to be human? And that's a real question, because not only is that my question in trying to figure out how I'm going to play a character, but what does it mean to be a human is the question that I carry with me everywhere. And by living my life so intensely, I am more happy. I'm a lot more sad. When I'm sad, I'm more sad. Everything is more intense. Everything matters more.
Right.
And so because of that, I can really go to the depths of these characters, I think. I mean, it was a great thing for my acting.
Great. Well, we got to take a short break. We'll be back in a moment with Communion and Liberation, so don't go away. Okay, we have a little video we'd like to show you now from a rapping priest.
All right, well, let's sanctify this. Because on the cross is my idol. Yes, he gets the title. The fruit of his crucifix is a new disciple. I read it in the Bible. This life is a survival of the fittest. It's with it, but the devil, he's your rival. You think I'm out of spitting about the cross like it is light. Forget that nonsense to carry your cross straight to fight. Like war is to a soldier, the cross is to my shoulder. When the devil tries to attack, I say, fool, move on. Over your life ain't always fair. Paul compared it to a race. Had to understand I would have lost it without his grace. See, many came before me, issues, some of them have failed. But with our latest prayers, I would be waiting to exhale. I know this life ain't easy. I done had my share of pains. I must take evil for precious. Can I say, Lord of the reigns? Just like Christ on Calvary, I pray to overcome. Lord, deliver me from evil and let that will be done. Shout out, going out to Lafayette right now. I'm at the African American Youth Congress, and to Extension for publishing this. You heard me? Deuces. Me and my buddy, who's a recent convert, have like a hip hop show where we talk about the saints and like apologetics, but we do it like in a way that's like it's attractive to people who are from the hood. So we rap every episode, we just rap with each other, freestyle and stuff like that, and have fun. Long story short, grew up, recognized that nothing satisfied me. I was popular, I had the girlfriends, had everything that the world says you should have to be happy, but I recognized an ache in my heart for something more. And I turned to all those different things, even good things, but a lot of sins, and nothing satisfied. And then I was invited on a retreat when I was 16 years old. I didn't want to go, but I went to it, and on the second night of the retreat, the bishop exposed the Eucharist, and I never believed in the Eucharist growing up. But whenever I saw him at the retreat, I knew that that was Jesus Christ, and I fell in love right there. And I asked him, I said, what is your will? Because I know that you're the one that's going to satisfy this ache. And the first words he told me were, I love you. And I was in mortal sin. So for him to say, I love you, was big, because it showed me that I don't have to do anything to be loved. But that his love is like faithful and unconditional. And after he said, I love you, he said, be my priest. So I didn't want to do that. I tried to run from it for years, but I was hooked on the Eucharist. And so I would just go to the Adoration Chapel every day for hours, and go to parties and leave the parties to go be with Jesus, go on dates, leave the dates to go be with Jesus. And I did that for a number of years, and then finally, after just like developing that personal relationship with Jesus Christ, he gave me the grace to say yes to being open to discerning the priesthood. And did that, and here I am.
All right, that was Father Joshua Johnson. He's the youngest priest in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, the Diocese of Baton Rouge, and he's only 27. Beautiful story about Eucharistic adoration and its power. You know, we start praying, the other stuff's got to go if it's contrary to the gospel. Let's talk about the gospel. Father Giussani was a powerful preacher, gave beautiful meditations on the gospel, and that really struck you, right?
Yes, because his emphasis was that to understand the gospel, we need to have a similar experience. So we need to in some way experience the same thing that the people who happened to meet Jesus experienced. And so before I understood that, before I really sort of went to the depth of things that happened to me like this, the gospel was just something that was read at Mass. It was just a story. It was distant from me. But realizing over and over and over again that what has happened to me in my life, in a sense, mirrors what happened in the Gospels. So from first meeting people who lived a certain way, did certain things, and being amazed. Like in the Gospel over and over again, it says, and they were amazed. Mm-hmm. They saw him do this, and they were amazed. So that, I recognized that was the beginning of my involvement with the movement, but really of my relationship with him, my relationship with Christ, my conversion. And that continues. I mean, I see it even the question that Jesus poses today, or the statement that he makes, there's, what does it profit you to gain the whole world and lose yourself? That was said to me by people who meant it, you know. And so I see that, yeah, in a sense, my life has the same character, the same sort of things happen. And that's a confirmation for me that I'm not, this isn't a fantasy. The Christian life isn't a fantasy. It's something real. Because my experience sort of matches that of the first people that ever lived something like this.
Right. I mean, it's a big reminder that Jesus is going to be the one and the only one that can ultimately satisfy us. That he's the one that brings a joy and a peace to our life. And our natural desires for happiness is really fulfilled in him, right? Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I know in watching like a documentary about the movement, you see it's hard to tell what's just Italian and what's part of the movement because they have a great joy of life and a lot of singing and things and even games. And I thought that was interesting for our culture. Talk about the role of the games you all sometimes do.
Yeah, so we'll do games on the vacations, on these retreats that we have, or even day retreats that we have. And sometimes it'll get very competitive. There'll be even violent sometimes, I have to admit. But there was sort of on our last vacation that we were at, there was a Members Domini, a consecrated, that came up to us, a couple of us who were doing the music, and said, I want something different for the games this year, because the point of the games isn't that we have sort of a break from the serious time of the vacation and sort of just goof around.
Right.
But these games can really teach us something about living and about living together.
Right.
And so before the games, we sang 4 sort of boisterous songs together.
Can you give us an example of that now?
Oh my God.
I want to live life on earth.
Still trying to get some music in you,
I would
boy.
need all the sort of 175 other people to do that. But anyway, we sang these songs, and then we proceeded to go out into the field to play these sort of ridiculous games. Because one of the sort of basic rule for CL games is that you take a game that's recognizable and you make it absolutely unrecognizable. So the twist means that people that are just good at sports or athletic won't be able to take everything over. We'll really have to do this together. So if we're going to play soccer, we're all going to be sort of strapped together, or there will be very, very strange rules. So anyway, this one time after this singing, it taught me that the games that we play are about being unified. So they're about enjoying life together. And there's sort of a unity that can come about, a unity that really satisfies a desire that I have when I go into these games. And it's not just about winning, it's not just about pissing my friends off, but it's about being together. It's about enjoying the life that we have.
I thought that it speaks to our culture because, we're very sports oriented, and we can be very oriented about our own physical perfection of the sport itself, and lose that sight of the unity that sport brings, the very good values that sport can bring, besides just the development of the individual, but a real fraternity and joy. And one thing, in speaking to you all this afternoon, it struck me as, and hearing you all talk, a nice way to go through life, not to be so centered on performance and achieving, but to enjoy community. I know, Jacob, you talk about just hanging out with the movement, how that was so important to you. Tell us about that.
Well, really, these are the people in the community at Benedictine. These are my best friends. And so really we spend a lot of time together. We study together. We hang out, but there's a real companionship. There is a real community. We live everything together. There's nothing that we don't talk about. These people, my friends, help me live more intensely. And that's incredible to have friendships like that.
Right. And Vince, you share with me too, some of the method about drawing others into this deeper fullness was to share from one's experience, not just to get this big doctrinal explanation all the time, but talk about that, sharing from experience.
Yeah, it's just, I realize that it's just humanly more convincing. If someone's trying to convince you of something, you say, well, I've seen this, I've experienced it, as opposed to I've read about it, I've learned about it sort of secondhand. It's totally more convincing. And so Giussani's emphasis on experience was first of all for me, for us, because I can't understand who Jesus Christ is. I can't understand what belonging to the church means if I don't first experience it, and experience it as corresponding to something deep within me. But then the fact that I can tell people, no, I've had an experience that's real, that's concrete, that isn't just sort of a hazy spiritual experience of fulfillment of the things that we all long for every day. That's able to speak volumes, and even more than that, because that can also just be words.
Right.
I can say, come and see, in the same way that John and Andrew grabbed Peter and said, come and see.
Right.
And that's the thing because then that experience can become someone else's.
I think the modern world is so ripe for that kind of evangelization, that we are isolated, we're longing for a deeper community experience of communion with one another, and certainly freedom. If somebody is interested in CL, what can they do to find out or get involved?
Yeah, on the you could go to the website that we have. It's clonline.org, and then you can go to the English page. And I'm not sure of the exact link. We should have been better about this. Somewhere on that website, there will be a list of contacts for pretty much all states, or most big cities around the country,
right.
even around the world. I don't know what your viewership is, but in most major cities there are communities. And so just to simply reach out to the people that are the contacts for those cities. Again, I wish we could have more specifics, but
Is there singing on the website?
there maybe.
I'm just
Killing me.
saying.
'Cause for anyone that wanted to, there wouldn't be an email that went unheeded. Because this is a way that we can bring more people in. We can share with people the experience that we have. So it seems a little random, it seems arbitrary, but just sending an email to people that are the contacts people will be able to do things with us, to get involved.
Right. Well, thanks so much for joining
Yeah,
us.
thank
Great having you
you.
on the show.
Yeah, thank you.
May our Heavenly Father shine His face upon you. May He give you His peace. And may Almighty God bless you, the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit. We'll see you next week.